Hi, this is Miss Vitale. This podcast is intended for my AP Biology students on chemical regulation and the endocrine system. We often use hormones as a reason for teenage moodiness and PMS. Over 1 million diabetics in the United States take the hormone insulin. Hormones are added to livestock feed and to cosmetics intended to reduce wrinkles. Butterfly metamorphosis is regulated by hormones. A hormone is a chemical signal that is secreted into the body fluids and communicates regulatory messages within the body. Target cells are the type of cells that respond to hormones. Endocrine glands are organs that make and secrete hormones. They are ductless and they secrete directly into body fluid. Neurosecretory cells are special nerve cells that secrete hormones. The endocrine system includes all hormone-secreting cells. It is the body's chemical regulating system. It often works with the nervous system. The nervous system also uses chemical neurotransmitters, and they may target endocrine cells. The endocrine system is a slower type of signaling, and the nervous system is a faster type of signaling. A local regulator is a chemical signal secreted into nearby fluids and cells. Some examples are growth factor, where peptides and proteins stimulate cell proliferation. NO, or nitric oxide, is a gas secreted by many cells for various functions. For example, white blood cells secrete NO to kill bacteria. Prostaglandins, or PGs, are modified fatty acids. They're found in semen, and they stimulate smooth muscle contractions in the uterus to control the movement of sperm. In the placenta, prostaglandins induce contractions. Vertebrates make over 50 hormones, and they may reach many tissues, but only the ones with the right receptors are affected. There are two ways hormones trigger changes in target cells. Number one, most hormones bind to plasma membrane proteins, initiating a signal transduction pathway. If you look at the first part of this diagram, the hormone binds to a receptor protein on the target cell and triggers a signal transduction pathway. The second way that hormones trigger changes in the target cells are steroid hormones, thyroid hormones, and some local regulators that enter target cells and bind to intracellular receptors. If you look at the second part of this diagram, B, it penetrates the target cell's plasma membrane and binds to a receptor inside the cell. The receptor acts as a transcription factor, causing a change in gene expression. Steroid hormones include estrogen and progesterone. A human has over 12 major endocrine glands. This is an overview of them. This is an overview of the glands and hormones that they produce. Beginning with the hypothalamus, it is the control center of the endocrine system. It integrates the endocrine and nervous systems. It's located in the lower brain. It receives information from nerves of the body and other parts of the brain. It gets its information about internal and external environment. It signals the secretion of hormones that are stored in the pituitary gland, or it regulates the function of the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland has two lobes, the posterior and anterior pituitaries. The posterior pituitary is made of nervous tissue. It is an extension of the hypothalamus, and it stores and secretes hormones made by the hypothalamus. The anterior pituitary is made of glandular tissue, not nervous tissue, and it makes its own hormones. The hypothalamus controls the anterior pituitary because the hypothalamus makes releasing hormones that causes the anterior pituitary to release its hormones, and the hypothalamus also makes inhibiting hormones that causes the anterior pituitary to stop releasing its hormones. An example of this is the hypothalamus releases TRH, which is THS releasing hormone. It makes the anterior pituitary secrete the THS, which is thyroid-stimulating hormone. Then it causes the thyroid to secrete thyroxine. Thyroxine increases the metabolism and warms the body. A set of neurosecretory cells extends from the hypothalamus into the posterior pituitary. These cells make oxytocin and antidiuretic hormone. Oxytocin contracts the uterus and the mammary glands. Antidiuretic hormone, or ADH, helps the nephron to absorb water. Both the oxytocin and the ADH go into the posterior pituitary, where it is released into the blood to perform its functions. A second set of neurosecretory cells in the hypothalamus secrete hormones that control the anterior pituitary. These hormones cause the anterior pituitary to make and release many hormones. TSH is thyroid-stimulating hormone, which stimulates the thyroid to release its hormones. ACTH is adrenal corticotrophic hormone, which we'll talk about later. FSH is follicle-stimulating hormone, which stimulates the follicles in the ovary to release the egg. And LH is luteinizing hormone, which, after the egg is released, changes the structure of the follicles that held the egg in the ovary. Other hormones of the anterior pituitary include GH, which is the growth hormone. That promotes protein synthesis. It uses fat for energy, and it develops and enlarges the body in young. Prolactin stimulates milk production in mammals. It controls fat production and reproduction in birds. It regulates larva development in amphibians, and it regulates salt and water in freshwater fish. Endorphins are painkillers. They affect the nervous system, like morphine. Part of runner's high is due to endorphins because they are released when you're running for a while. They're also released during meditation and acupuncture. The thyroid gland is located under the voice box. It affects all of the body's tissues. It produces thyroxine and triiodothyroxine. T4 has 4 iodine atoms. T3 has 3 iodine atoms. Both affect development and maturation. For example, in a tadpole, it causes the tadpole to develop into the adult. Both of these hormones also affect bone and nerve development in mammals. They help to maintain blood pressure, heart rate, muscle tone, digestion. They increase oxygen consumption, therefore raising metabolism. Hyperthyroidism is too much T3 and T4. It can cause the person to overheat, have high blood pressure, be irritable, and lose weight. Hypothyroidism is too little T3 and T4. These people gain weight, they're tired all the time, and they're intolerant to cold. Both of these conditions can be treated with hormones. A goiter is an enlarged thyroid because you don't have enough iodine in your diet. Most of us consume salt that has iodine added to it and has reduced the cases of goiter. Calcium is important for neurotransmitters, muscle contraction, blood clotting, and transporting across cell membranes. The thyroid and the parathyroid control the concentration of calcium ions. There are 4 parathyroids that are embedded in the thyroid. Calcitonin from the thyroid lowers calcium. PTH, parathyroid hormone, raises calcium. It comes from the parathyroids. The calcitonin and the PTH together regulate blood calcium levels. 2 hormones like this, where one raises something and the other lowers something, are called antagonistic hormones because they have the opposite effect. The pancreas produces 2 hormones that control energy supplies: insulin and glucagon. Insulin and glucagon are produced by islet cells, and there's 2 types of islet cells in the pancreas. Alpha islet cells produce glucagon, and beta islet cells make insulin. Insulin and glucagon control glucose in the blood and glucose stored as glycogen. They are also antagonistic. Insulin lowers glucose in the blood in the blood by causing cells to take it in, and it causes the liver to take in glucose and make glycogen. Glucagon raises the glucose in the blood by causing the liver to release glycogen, which results in higher levels of glucose in the blood. Some diseases associated with the pancreas are diabetes mellitus. This is when cells can't absorb glucose from the blood. 5 out of 100 people in the United States have diabetes. Not enough insulin in the blood, or the cells don't respond normally to insulin, are the major causes of diabetes. Therefore, the cells can't get enough glucose for energy, and they burn fat and proteins. The digestive system continues to absorb glucose, and blood levels can get very high. Glucose can be detected in the urine, which is not normal in people with diabetes. And the main treatments for diabetes are insulin and change in diet. Diabetes kills 350,000 people per year in the United States, and it can damage kidneys, cause cardiovascular damage. It can also damage nerves and cause gangrene. Type 1 is insulin-dependent diabetes. These people need to take insulin. It's an autoimmune disease. The T cells attack your beta cells. Therefore, the pancreas doesn't produce enough insulin. It usually develops before age 15. Type 2 is non-insulin dependent. This is the type that usually develops in older people, but because of the epidemic of obesity in children, people are starting to see it more and more in younger children. They have healthy beta cells and normal insulin production, but the body cells don't respond to insulin. There can be an inherited factor. 90% of all diabetes cases in the United States are type 2, and they usually occur in obese people over 40. It can be controlled with diet and exercise. Some symptoms of diabetes is lack of energy, craving for sweets, frequent urination, and thirst. The test used to determine if you have diabetes is a glucose tolerance test. You drink a sugar solution and they test blood glucose levels at intervals after that. Hypoglycemia is not common. It is when you have hyperactive beta cells that produce too much insulin when sugar is eaten. Therefore, blood glucose levels drop severely. The symptoms can include hunger, weakness, sweating, and nervousness. When the brain doesn't get enough glucose, convulsions can occur. It can be controlled by eating less sugar and frequent small meals. The adrenal gland is located on the top of the kidneys. There are 2 glands in one, the adrenal medulla and the adrenal cortex. The adrenal medulla produces flight or fight hormones, which are released in response to stress, epinephrine or adrenaline, and norepinephrine or noradrenaline. This is a short-term reaction to stress. What happens is that stress activates the hypothalamus, and it signals nerves in the spinal cord. Cells of the spinal cord extend to the adrenal medulla and stimulate it to release epinephrine and norepinephrine into the blood. This causes liver cells to release glucose, blood pressure to go up, breathing rate to go up, metabolism to go up. It dilates blood vessels in the brain and muscles, and it constricts blood vessels in the digestive tract. The flight or fight response is called that because when an animal is confronted with a stressful situation, they're either going to do one of 2 things. They're going to stand and fight, or they're going to run. Oftentimes, this can be experienced or felt when you're suddenly scared or you have to suddenly react. For example, when you're driving, if a ball rolls out or an animal runs out in front of your car, you suddenly react by slamming on the brakes. Blood rushes to your large muscles to help you to react. Breathing and everything else goes up so you can get more oxygen to your tissues. Blood is focused in areas that are going to help you to react, and it's taken away from areas that it's really not needed, like the digestive system. The adrenal cortex releases hormones for slower, longer-lasting responses to stress. There are 2 types of corticosteroids. Mineral corticoids regulate salt and water balance. They increase blood volume and raise blood pressure. Glucocorticoids promote glucose production from proteins and fats. This breaks down muscle. Increased levels of this suppress inflammation. Cortisone is a glucocorticoid, and cortisone is used to relieve swelling and inflammation. All corticosteroids are obviously steroid hormones. Gonads include the ovaries and testes. These two organs secrete sex hormones. In mammals, they produce androgens, progestins, and estrogens. Androgens are lower in females and higher in males, and estrogens are higher in females and lower in males. Estrogen maintains the female reproductive system, and it controls female development. Progestins prepare the uterus for the fetus, and androgens maintain male reproductive organs and control male development. The major androgen in males is testosterone. Androgens produced by an embryo cause the male to develop from the original female embryo.